The sun hung low over the jagged mountains of Carrion 9, casting long shadows across the battlefield. The air was thick with dust and the smell of scorched earth, a reminder of the countless battles that had already taken place on this planet. Zarya, a warrior of the Valkyrie, stood at the edge of the arena. Her armor shimmered with a deep metallic green, reflecting the dying light, and her long, silver hair moved like a living thing in the dry wind. She had fought on many worlds, against many species, and her victories were countless. She had never been defeated. The Council had called this duel as a spectacle, but also as a challenge. A human had come, an unexpected volunteer, claiming he could match a Valkyrie warrior. Zarya's fellow warriors laughed when the announcement was made. A human? One of them had sneered. They are soft, fragile, not even fit to fight on this world. Another had thrown his head back in laughter, showing sharp teeth that gleamed in the fading sun. This will be over before it even begins. Watch as the human falls in minutes. But Zarya did not laugh. She felt a strange curiosity stirring inside her, something she had not experienced for a long time. This human, small and seemingly weak compared to her and her kind, had voluntarily stepped onto the battlefield knowing the risks. That alone was unusual. The humans she had encountered before were clever in their ways, but they rarely faced combat directly against a superior species. Yet, this one seemed different. The arena was massive, a natural formation surrounded by jagged cliffs and broken rocks. A shallow river cut through one side, glimmering faintly with the reflection of the crimson sky. Dust swirled from the wind, and the only sounds were the distant cries of alien birds and the low hum of energy weapons left abandoned from previous fights. Zarya's boots crunched against the rocky ground as she stepped forward, her eyes scanning for any sign of the human. He appeared suddenly from a narrow canyon path, moving with calm and measured steps. Carter, a human soldier from Earth, was not tall or overly muscular. He carried no strange alien weapon, only a standard combat suit and a plasma rifle that he held with easy familiarity. His eyes met Zarya's directly, unflinching and steady, and for a moment, the air itself seemed to pause. He did not seem afraid, though any other being in this arena would have shown at least a flicker of hesitation. The audience, a mix of Valkyrie officials, soldiers, and a few spectators from neighboring worlds, murmured in disbelief. Some whispered that this human was foolish, some that he was brave beyond measure. Zarya, however, remained silent. She studied him carefully, noting the confidence in his posture, the way his hands gripped the weapon, and the calm determination in his eyes. The rules of the duel were simple: a one-on-one combat, no external interference, and victory would be determined by either incapacitation or surrender. Zarya had fought many warriors before, and she always expected a challenge from the strongest opponents of her kind. She had never faced a human in combat, and she had certainly never expected one to stand before her like this. The council signaled the start. A sharp horn echoed across the arena, and Zarya's heart quickened not with fear, but with anticipation. She shifted her weight, feeling the familiar hum of her energy blade, a weapon she had wielded flawlessly for years. Carter, on the other hand, adjusted his rifle with a casual movement, his gaze never leaving her. Zarya charged first. Her movements were fluid and precise, a dance of deadly grace. She swung her blade in a wide arc, aiming to end the duel quickly. The human ducked, his movements surprisingly agile for his size. He rolled to the side and used the uneven ground to push himself up, keeping his rifle trained on her. Zarya's attack was meant to intimidate, to overwhelm, yet Carter's calm response only fueled her curiosity. The human fired a single shot, not at her, but at a rock behind her. The energy blast exploded in a shower of sparks, sending debris flying toward Zarya. She sidestepped, narrowly avoiding the fragments, and realized he was not attacking with brute force but with strategy. He was using the environment to his advantage, making the battlefield unpredictable. Every instinct Zarya had about her opponent being weak was now challenged. Zarya's movements became faster, sharper, her strikes more precise. She tested him with a series of attacks, each one designed to measure his reflexes and strength. Carter responded with a mixture of dodges, quick maneuvers, and occasional counterattacks. He did not have the raw power or speed of a Valkyrie, but he was clever, resourceful, and unafraid. Every time Zarya thought she had him cornered, he would find a way out, forcing her to adapt and rethink her approach. Minutes passed, and the duel continued. Zarya had never fought an opponent like this, someone who was not only enduring her attacks but learning from them in real time. His unpredictability irritated and fascinated her at the same time. She realized that the human was not relying on strength alone. He was observing, calculating, and reacting in ways she had never seen from any opponent. Carter noticed the change in her. He saw the slight narrowing of her eyes, the way she shifted her stance more cautiously. He did not know much about Valkyrie tactics, but he understood human intuition and experience. Every move he made was a mixture of training and instinct, improvising when needed. He had learned quickly that brute force would not win this fight. Only cleverness, patience, and timing could give him a chance. The spectators were now on the edge of their seats. Whispers spread through the crowd, some in disbelief, some in admiration. "Look at the human," one said quietly. "He's holding his own against Zarya. I never thought it possible." Another shook their head, unsure whether to laugh or be amazed. The energy in the arena shifted. This duel was no longer a simple display of dominance. It was becoming a test of human ingenuity against alien perfection. Zarya paused for a moment, breathing heavily, her energy blade glowing faintly in the dim light. She studied Carter carefully. He was wounded slightly, a scratch across his cheek, a scuff on his armor, but he stood firm. There was no hesitation, no fear, only determination. In that instant, Zarya understood something she had never considered before. The human spirit could be as strong as the body, and sometimes even stronger. She attacked again, faster and more forcefully, determined to end the fight. Carter met her charge with skillful timing, using his rifle to create diversions and take advantage of the terrain. Rocks, dust, and debris flew in all directions as their clash continued. Each strike tested their limits, pushing them to their endurance. Zarya could feel the heat of battle like a living thing, and for the first time in her life, she was uncertain of the outcome. The sun sank lower, turning the sky into a blaze of red and orange. Shadows danced across the battlefield, and the wind carried the sounds of the duel across the cliffs. Zarya's heart beat faster, not with fear, but with a growing respect for her opponent. The human before her was proving that strength was not always physical, that courage and cleverness could rival the might of a Valkyrie warrior. As the first part of the duel came to a pause, both combatants stood across from each other, breathing heavily. Zarya's eyes met Carter's once more, and in that gaze, there was recognition. She had underestimated him, and now she knew that this fight would be unlike any she had faced before. Carter, too, realized that his opponent was not invincible, and that his own resolve would be tested to the limit. The battlefield was silent for a moment, the wind carrying the faint sound of distant mountains. Both fighters knew that the next phase of their duel would be even more dangerous, more challenging, and more revealing than the first. The outcome was uncertain, and neither of them could predict who would prevail. One thing was clear. This human was unlike any opponent Zarya had ever faced, and the fight had only just begun. In that quiet pause, Zarya felt a flicker of something new, a mixture of anticipation, curiosity, and respect. She had faced the strongest warriors of her kind. Yet this human had brought something entirely different to the battlefield. It was not strength alone that made him formidable. It was the way he thought, adapted, and refused to yield. The first part of the duel ended with both combatants standing firm, the tension thick in the air. The crowd watched in awe and disbelief. The story of the human who dared to challenge a Valkyrie warrior was just beginning, and no one could predict what would happen next. One thing was certain. Zarya had already learned that humans were far more surprising than she or anyone had imagined. The wind continued to whip across the jagged battlefield, carrying dust and the faint scent of scorched stone. Zarya's breathing was steady, but her mind raced. She had fought warriors from dozens of worlds, some faster, stronger, or more cunning than herself. Yet Carter, the human, remained steady, moving with a rhythm that was neither predictable nor reckless. Every step he took was purposeful, every dodge calculated, and every strike measured. He was small, weaker than most warriors she had faced, yet he possessed something far more dangerous: adaptability. Zarya circled him, her energy blade humming softly, reflecting the last rays of the sun. She tested him again, feinting left, then striking right. Carter rolled beneath the strike, coming up behind a fallen boulder for cover. The human did not panic. He scanned his surroundings quickly, using the uneven terrain to create distance. He aimed his rifle, but instead of firing at Zarya directly, he targeted the rocks around her, sending clouds of dust and debris into her path. The blasts were not lethal, yet they forced her to rethink her strategy. Zarya had grown accustomed to opponents who relied on brute force. The Valkyrie valued strength, speed, and precision. Most opponents would try to overpower her in direct combat, and she had never faced someone who used the battlefield itself as a weapon. Carter did not just react, he adapted, shaping the fight to his advantage. Each movement he made demonstrated a level of ingenuity that Zarya could not ignore. She lunged forward with a rapid series of strikes, each faster than the last. Carter dodged and rolled, narrowly avoiding each attack, and then he threw a small device that emitted a bright, sharp flash of light. Zarya's eyes were momentarily blinded, forcing her to step back. The human moved quickly, closing distance in a way that no Valkyrie had taught her to expect. He pressed forward, striking at the edges of her armor, with a non-lethal but effective tool designed to test her defense. Zarya felt a thrill run through her veins. For the first time in many years, she was fully challenged. This human was not only holding his ground, he was forcing her to adjust, forcing her to think in ways she had not needed to before. Every strike, every movement, every pause in the fight revealed that Carter was clever, resourceful, and brave. He was small, but he fought with the intelligence and courage of someone far larger than himself. The battlefield seemed to shift around them. Rocks toppled, dust swirled, and debris scattered as the two combatants moved. Zarya's strikes grew sharper, her instincts honed, yet Carter continued to find openings, exploiting the tiniest lapses in her defense. Each time she thought she had an advantage, he adapted, turning her strength against her in small, unexpected ways. He was human, yes, but he was learning, improving, and surviving in a way that surprised her. Zarya realized that her initial judgment of humans had been flawed. She had assumed they were fragile, weak, and incapable of real combat. But Carter's movements, his choices, and his calm determination proved otherwise. He was not the strongest physically, nor the fastest, but he possessed qualities that even the most elite warriors of her kind sometimes lacked: patience, ingenuity, and an unyielding will. Carter, too, studied Zarya with keen attention. He had never seen an alien warrior like her before, and he knew he could not match her strength head-on. Instead, he observed her patterns, noting how she shifted her weight, how she held her blade, and how she responded to sudden changes in the environment. He used this knowledge to anticipate her next move, to create small openings, and to protect himself from her lethal strikes. Every moment of the fight was a lesson, and he absorbed them quickly, thinking 3 steps ahead while continuing to act in the present. The sun dipped lower, casting the battlefield into a dim orange glow. Shadows stretched across the jagged rocks, creating patterns that both helped and hindered their vision. Dust hung thick in the air, clinging to armor and clothing alike. Zarya paused briefly, her energy blade still humming, and regarded the human with a new respect. She realized that brute strength alone might not win this fight. She needed to think differently, to adapt to an opponent who was as unpredictable as he was determined. Carter did not stop moving. He ducked behind a rock formation and scanned the terrain. He had noticed that Zarya relied heavily on her upper body strength and speed, which left her slightly vulnerable to low attacks and quick lateral movements. Using a combination of small devices and careful positioning, he created distractions, forcing Zarya to shift her focus constantly. She responded with precision, but the constant adjustments were tiring. Even for her, Zarya struck again, this time more carefully. She tested his reaction, feinting an overhead strike and then sweeping low. Carter rolled to the side, narrowly avoiding the strike, and kicked a rock toward her. The rock bounced off her armor harmlessly, but the motion forced her to step back, giving Carter a chance to advance. He aimed his rifle again, firing at the ground near her feet to create more movement and confusion. The strategy was simple but effective, and it worked. The audience watched in stunned silence. The Valkyrie had never seen a human perform like this before. Some of them began whispering among themselves, wondering if their assumptions about humans had been wrong all along. Zarya, though focused on the fight, could not ignore the murmurs. She realized that this duel had become more than just a test of combat skill, it was a revelation. Humans, it seemed, had an inner strength that many of her kind had overlooked. Minutes stretched into an hour as the duel continued. Sweat ran down Zarya's face, but her movements remained precise. Carter's suit was scratched and scuffed, his face streaked with dirt and blood, yet he pressed on, never showing signs of surrender. Each time Zarya thought she had the upper hand, he adapted, responding with clever maneuvers that kept him in the fight. She began to feel a strange admiration, a recognition that this human was not an ordinary opponent. Zarya took a brief pause behind a fallen boulder, her chest heaving slightly. She observed Carter carefully. His eyes were sharp, scanning constantly, and his posture remained calm and ready. Despite the exhaustion that must have been building, he showed no fear. She realized that his determination was rooted not in arrogance, but in a deep commitment to prove something, to show that humanity could stand against the mightiest of warriors. Carter, noticing her pause, seized the moment to advance. He used the terrain skillfully, moving from shadow to shadow, using rocks and uneven ground to shield himself. He launched a small device that emitted a bright flare, momentarily disorienting Zarya. She reacted instinctively, but the flare had created enough distraction for Carter to close in. He ducked and rolled, using agility and timing to narrowly avoid her counterattack. Zarya's lips tightened in concentration. She felt a thrill she had not felt in years, the excitement of a real challenge. Every strike, every dodge, every movement required her full attention. She had faced many warriors, but none had forced her to think so quickly, to adapt so rapidly. Carter was not just surviving. He was teaching her new ways to engage in combat, forcing her to see beyond the limits of raw power. The shadows grew longer as the sun finally set behind the mountains. The battlefield was bathed in a dim, orange glow, and dust swirled thickly in the air. Zarya and Carter faced each other once more, both breathing heavily, both aware that the next phase of their duel would be decisive. Neither had given ground, yet both had gained insight into the other's abilities. For the first time, Zarya felt uncertainty. She had never doubted her victory before. But this human was different. He was clever, resourceful, and fearless. He moved with a combination of instinct and intelligence that rivaled her own skill. She had underestimated him, and now she understood that she needed to respect him not just as an opponent, but as a warrior. Carter, on the other hand, felt a surge of cautious confidence. He had faced a creature far stronger and faster than himself. Yet he had survived and learned. He knew the fight was far from over. But he also realized that the strength of a human mind and spirit could sometimes match, or even surpass, physical superiority. The first part of the night settled over the battlefield, and the duel paused for a brief moment. Zarya and Carter stood across from each other, both wary, both breathing heavily, and both recognizing the other as a worthy opponent. The fight was no longer just about victory. It had become a lesson in courage, ingenuity, and determination. The audience held its breath. Even the Valkyrie warriors watching could sense the shift in Zarya. She was no longer fighting only to win, she was fighting to understand. To understand this human who had dared to face her, who had endured her strength, and who had forced her to see the limits of her own assumptions. As the night deepened and the stars began to appear in the alien sky, the battlefield was quiet for a moment. Zarya's eyes met Carter's once more, and in that gaze, There was acknowledgement, respect, recognition. This human had survived the first phase of combat, and in doing so, had proven that he was no ordinary opponent. Both warriors knew that the fight would continue, that the challenges ahead would test them even further. But for now, they were equals in endurance, skill, and determination. And in that quiet pause, Zarya understood something profound. Humans were far stronger, smarter, and more resilient than anyone, including her, had believed. The second part of the duel ended with tension thick in the air. Both fighters prepared for the next stage, knowing that the outcome was uncertain, and that the true test of strength, courage, and ingenuity was only beginning. The story of the human who dared to face a Valkyrie warrior was far from over, and the universe itself seemed to watch in anticipation. The night had deepened over Carrion 9, and the battlefield was bathed in the pale light of twin moons. Shadows stretched across jagged rocks, and the air was cooler now, carrying the faint metallic scent of the planet. Zarya stood silently, her silver hair glinting under the moonlight, energy blade humming softly in her hand. Her mind was sharp, every sense attuned to the slightest movement. Carter, the human, moved with equal focus. His rifle held loosely, but ready. Eyes scanning constantly. Both warriors knew that the next phase of combat would be decisive. Zarya advanced, her movements faster than before, each step precise and calculated. She struck at Carter repeatedly, testing his reflexes and endurance. The human ducked, rolled, and dodged with an agility that seemed impossible given his size. Zarya struck again, forcing him backward. But every time she thought she had an opening, Carter adapted, shifting his stance, using rocks and uneven ground to his advantage. Each movement was deliberate, each response intelligent. He was not fighting blindly. He was learning from her, and she realized it with a sharp clarity that surprised her. The duel was no longer just a test of strength, it had become a battle of minds. Zarya began to notice patterns in Carter's behavior. When she lunged left, he rolled right. When she slowed her attack, he seized the moment to advance. The human was small, and she could overpower him with a single strike, yet he avoided her attacks with a combination of quick thinking and precise timing. His resilience was remarkable, and Zarya found herself forced to rethink her strategy mid-combat. Carter fired a small energy pulse at the ground near her feet, causing a series of small explosions that kicked up dust and rocks. Zarya leaped back, narrowly avoiding the blasts, and the energy from her blade flared slightly as she swung with renewed force. She attacked with a series of rapid strikes, each faster than the last, but Carter anticipated many of them. He rolled to the side, ducked low, and even managed to deflect a strike with a small tool he had fashioned from his equipment. Zarya's eyes widened. He was not only surviving, he was innovating. For the first time in her life, Zarya felt the sting of uncertainty. She had always relied on her speed, her strength, and her training to defeat opponents. Yet this human, with no advanced alien training, no natural enhancements, was forcing her to adapt. Each strike required more thought. Each movement demanded full attention. She could not rely on instinct alone. The fight had become unpredictable, and unpredictability was dangerous. Carter, meanwhile, pressed forward with careful precision. He understood that strength alone would not win the battle. His human instincts, combined with his training, guided him as he used the terrain to his advantage. He climbed atop a fallen rock to gain a better position, then fired small pulses toward Zarya not to harm her, but to control her movements. The human strategy was simple but brilliant. He forced her to adjust constantly, wearing down her energy and focus. Zarya growled softly, her patience thinning. She had faced countless warriors who challenged her body and her skill, but never had an opponent challenged her mind so effectively. Every time she thought she had the upper hand, Carter responded with ingenuity. She realized that he was studying her just as closely as she was studying him. He was learning her techniques, predicting her moves, and finding ways to counter them. It was exhausting and exhilarating at the same time. Carter noticed a slight shift in her stance, a momentary pause as she readied her next attack. He used it to his advantage, rolling under her swing and coming up behind a rock formation. He fired a small pulse toward her left side, forcing her to leap back. Zarya's reaction was swift, but it had cost her energy and momentum. The human had found an opening and used it, not with brute force, but with clever timing. She felt a mixture of frustration and admiration. The duel continued, each combatant pushing the other to their limits. Zarya struck with a combination of precision and power. Each blow aimed to test Carter's defense. He responded with careful movements, using every part of the battlefield to shield himself and gain advantage. Rocks, debris, and uneven ground were no longer obstacles. They were tools in his strategy. Every move forced Zarya to adapt, to consider angles and patterns she had never had to account for before. As the fight progressed, Zarya began to respect the human more deeply. She had fought the strongest warriors of her kind, but none had forced her to think so creatively, to respond so fluidly to unexpected challenges. Carter's endurance was remarkable. He did not tire easily, and his mind remained sharp under pressure. She realized that humans possessed a combination of courage, intelligence, and resilience that could rival even the most skilled alien warriors. Carter, despite his exhaustion, remained calm. Sweat streaked his face, his suit was scratched, and his movements were slightly slower than before. But his mind was clear. He had learned from every strike, every movement, and every response of Zarya's. He adapted not just to survive, but to challenge her, to demonstrate that human ingenuity and determination could stand against even the most formidable opponent. The battlefield seemed almost alive, responding to their movements. Dust and rocks flew with every strike, and the sound of metal against metal echoed across the jagged cliffs. Zarya launched a powerful strike aimed directly at Carter, intending to end the duel. The human anticipated it, rolling to the side and using a combination of speed and terrain to avoid the strike. Then, with a quick maneuver, he sent a small device flying toward her, forcing her to retreat. For the first time, Zarya felt the sting of surprise, a momentary doubt in her usually unshakable confidence. Carter's eyes were sharp, focused on her every movement. He had observed her for long enough to recognize patterns, but he knew the battle was far from over. He used the shadows to his advantage, moving silently and striking strategically. Each move was designed to challenge Zarya, to force her to think beyond her instincts and strength. The human was not just surviving, he was teaching her, showing her that strategy and intelligence could level the playing field against raw power. Zarya's breath came heavier now, but she did not stop. She had never experienced a fight like this. The thrill of challenge, the rush of unpredictability, and the need to adapt constantly made her feel alive in ways she had never felt before. Carter, small and seemingly fragile, had transformed the duel into a test of minds, endurance, and ingenuity. She felt respect growing inside her, a recognition that humans were not to be underestimated. The duel reached a critical moment. Zarya lunged with a rapid, spinning strike, expecting to catch Carter off guard. He rolled under her swing, coming up behind cover, and used a pulse device to create a small explosion near her feet. Zarya leaped back, narrowly avoiding the blast. She realized that the human had not only survived her attacks, but had also turned her power against her. For the first time, she questioned whether her initial assumptions about humans had been completely wrong. Carter pressed forward carefully, using the terrain to his advantage. He had studied her movements, learned her patterns, and was now anticipating her strategies. Zarya, in turn, adjusted constantly, realizing that brute force alone would not win this duel. She needed to outthink him, to adapt faster than she ever had in her career as a warrior. The realization was both daunting and exciting. As the night deepened, both warriors paused briefly, their breathing heavy, bodies tense, and minds racing. Zarya's eyes met Carter's, and in that gaze, there was understanding. They were not merely combatants now. They were equals in endurance, skill, and determination. Both had tested each other to the limits. And both had learned from the battle. Respect had grown between them, silent but undeniable. Zarya realized that the fight was no longer about defeating an opponent. It was about understanding the strength of another species, about witnessing courage and ingenuity in action. Carter, too, recognized that his human mind and spirit were capable of standing against a being far stronger, faster, and more advanced. Each had proven to the other that strength was not only measured by muscle or weaponry, but by the mind, the heart, and the will to endure. The duel paused once more. The battlefield quiet, under the glow of the twin moons. Dust hung in the air, and the faint sound of distant alien creatures added to the stillness. Both Zarya and Carter stood facing each other, exhausted yet alert, aware that the next phase of the fight would determine the outcome. They had pushed each other to their limits. And now, both awaited the final test of strength, courage, and ingenuity. The night was alive with tension. The audience, though silent, could feel the shift. What had begun as a duel to demonstrate superiority had transformed into a display of human ingenuity, courage, and resilience. Even the Valkyrie, known for their arrogance in battle, could see that humans were not to be underestimated. Zarya had learned a lesson she would not forget, and Carter had proven that humanity could stand against the strongest warriors in the galaxy. As the third part of the duel ended, both warriors prepared for the final phase. The battlefield, scarred and battered from their movements, stood as a testament to their endurance. Zarya's eyes glimmered with newfound respect, and Carter's determination burned brighter than ever. Neither knew exactly what the final moments would bring, but both were ready to face it. The story of the human who had surprised an alien warrior was approaching its climax, and the universe itself seemed to hold its breath. The battlefield under the twin moons of Carrion 9 was quiet, yet the tension was electric. Zarya and Carter faced each other, both aware that the final phase of their duel would decide more than victory. It would define respect, skill, and the strength of spirit. Dust and debris from the long struggle clung to their armor, and each bore scratches and minor injuries, reminders of the endurance each had demanded from the other. The night air was cold, but the heat of battle still lingered, as if the planet itself was holding its breath. Zarya advanced first, her movements sharp and precise, each strike faster than lightning. Carter responded with agility and ingenuity, dodging, rolling, and using the terrain in ways that Zarya had not yet fully anticipated. He created diversions, small explosions, and sudden shifts that forced her to adjust instantly. She realized that her previous tactics were no longer sufficient. She had to think faster, anticipate more, and move beyond instinct alone. Every strike required calculation, every decision carried risk, and every moment was a test of their abilities. Carter, though exhausted, remained calm. His rifle, damaged in parts, was now more of a tool for creating obstacles than a weapon of attack. He knew he could not match Zarya in strength, speed, or precision, but he could match her in cleverness and adaptability. Each move he made was designed to challenge her, to keep her off balance, and to create openings that could turn the tide. His human ingenuity, honed by experience and instinct, had become his greatest strength. Zarya attacked with a spinning strike, aiming to end the duel decisively. Carter rolled to the side, narrowly avoiding the blow, and used a small device to create a flash of light, temporarily blinding her. Zarya's reflexes saved her, but she stumbled slightly. In that moment, Carter seized the opportunity to advance. He dodged her follow-up strike, using the uneven terrain to his advantage, and launched a pulse at her side, not to harm, but to force her to shift. Zarya adjusted, impressed at how he had turned her own movements against her, without directly engaging in lethal force. The duel had become a dance of intelligence and adaptability. Zarya realized that the human was not just surviving. He was shaping the fight, controlling the flow, and testing her in ways she had never experienced. Every movement forced her to rethink her strategies, to adapt, and to observe not just his attacks, but his intentions. Carter's strength lay in his mind, his perception, and his determination. Zarya had faced many opponents with superior physical abilities, but few had challenged her intellectually in the midst of combat. Carter's breathing was steady, though he felt the strain of the long duel in every muscle. His arms were tired, his legs ached, and yet his mind remained sharp. He had learned from every strike, every feint, and every shift in Zarya's stance. He moved with purpose, never wasting energy, and always looking for a way to turn her skill to his advantage. The human determination to endure and adapt was remarkable, and Zarya could sense the growing respect from her own instincts. Zarya paused briefly, sensing that the human had learned something crucial from the duel so far. She studied his movements carefully, noting the subtle ways he shifted his weight, how he timed his reactions, and the small patterns in his behavior. She realized that to truly win, she could not rely solely on her superior strength or speed. She had to anticipate his ingenuity, respect his adaptability, and perhaps even challenge herself in new ways she had never considered. Carter moved cautiously, knowing that the human's survival depended on careful observation and clever use of the battlefield. He had noticed that Zarya's most powerful strikes required a brief preparation, a momentary pause that could be exploited. Using the rocks and debris around him, he created distractions, forcing her to adjust mid-attack. He rolled beneath her swing, came up behind cover, and launched a device that produced a brief energy shock enough to disrupt her rhythm but not to harm her. Zarya reacted instinctively, her blade flashing as she blocked and adjusted. The fight had reached a critical point. Both combatants were exhausted, yet neither showed signs of surrender. Zarya's eyes narrowed as she studied Carter, seeing his determination, his cleverness, and his unyielding spirit. For the first time, she felt a mixture of admiration and cautious respect. This human, small and seemingly fragile, had endured her might and adapted in ways that challenged her entire understanding of combat. She realized that victory might not be achieved through power alone. It might require acknowledgement, strategy, and respect. Carter noticed a momentary hesitation in Zarya. Her attacks were still precise, still dangerous, but her rhythm had shifted slightly. He used this to his advantage, moving quickly and positioning himself to challenge her assumptions. He ducked, rolled, and fired a small pulse at her feet, creating a minor explosion that forced her backward. Zarya adjusted, but the human had demonstrated a key truth. Ingenuity could rival raw power. Zarya struck again, faster and more forcefully, intending to end the duel decisively. Carter anticipated her movement, rolled aside, and used the terrain to his advantage, closing the distance between them. He launched another device, carefully timed, that disrupted her focus. Zarya barely avoided the strike. Realizing in that moment that she had underestimated him, the human was not simply enduring, he was challenging her understanding of what combat could be. The audience, though distant, could feel the shift in energy. This duel was no longer merely a spectacle. It had become a display of human ingenuity, courage, and resilience. Even the Valkyrie, known for their arrogance in combat, observed with newfound respect. Zarya had learned a vital lesson. Humans were unpredictable, clever, and capable of rising to challenges far beyond what most species expected. Carter, sensing her acknowledgement, pressed forward with renewed focus. He did not aim to overpower her, but to demonstrate the strength of human spirit. He moved fluidly, using every part of the battlefield, rocks, shadows, and uneven ground to keep Zarya off balance. Each movement was precise, each action intentional. He had learned her patterns, her strengths, and her weaknesses. And now he used that knowledge to challenge her in ways that required more than brute strength to counter. Zarya realized that the duel was no longer simply about defeating an opponent. It had become a lesson in respect, endurance, and understanding. She had faced the strongest warriors in the galaxy, but this human had forced her to see beyond physical power. His courage, creativity, and adaptability had challenged her in ways that no other opponent ever had. For the first time, she considered that true strength was not only measured by speed, muscle, or weaponry, it was also measured by mind, spirit, and will. Carter's breathing was steady, though the strain was evident. His body ached, his movements slowed slightly, yet his mind remained alert. He had learned from every strike, every feint, and every shift in Zarya's approach. He had adapted, improvised, and endured, showing that determination could rival even the most advanced alien skill. Zarya could feel it too. Her attacks were met with ingenuity rather than brute resistance, her strength countered by cleverness. In a final exchange, Zarya launched her most powerful strike yet, aiming to end the duel decisively. Carter anticipated the attack, rolling to the side and using a combination of terrain and a small device to create a flash of light. Zarya blocked instinctively, but the human's maneuver disrupted her rhythm. He seized the moment to approach, ready not to strike with force, but to show that his presence, his ingenuity, and his endurance were enough to challenge her. Zarya paused mid-attack, energy blade humming faintly, and looked directly at Carter. In that instant, she made a decision. She realized that victory was not solely about defeating an opponent. It was about acknowledging their strength, courage, and ingenuity. She lowered her weapon slightly, a gesture that stunned the audience and the human alike. Carter, sensing the shift, stood still, his eyes wide with recognition and respect. The duel ended not with a final strike, but with mutual acknowledgement. Zarya had learned the true lesson of the battle. Strength alone does not define a warrior. Carter had shown that courage, creativity, and resilience could rival even the most formidable physical abilities. The human had survived, adapted, and challenged her expectations, and in doing so, had earned her respect. The battlefield fell silent, the dust settling around the two warriors. The twin moons reflected off their armor, highlighting the scratches, dents, and marks of a battle well fought. Zarya regarded Carter, a small smile playing on her lips. She had been surprised, challenged, and humbled. For the first time in her life, she recognized a human as a worthy opponent not just in combat, but in spirit and intellect. Carter exhaled slowly, his muscles tense but relieved. He had survived the duel and, more importantly, had proven a vital truth. Humanity could stand against the strongest warriors in the galaxy. He had endured, adapted, and demonstrated that cleverness and determination were as formidable as any weapon. Zarya's acknowledgement validated everything he had risked to stand on this battlefield. The audience, previously skeptical and mocking, erupted in quiet awe. Whispers spread quickly through the crowd. Even the Valkyrie warriors, known for their pride and confidence, could not deny what they had witnessed. A human had faced one of their greatest warriors and emerged not broken, but respected. The story of Carter and Zarya would be remembered, not as a tale of victory or defeat, but as a testament to ingenuity, courage, and the strength of the human spirit. Zarya turned away from Carter and looked across the battlefield. She could see the scars of combat, etched into the rocks and dust, reminders of the struggle they had shared. In her heart, she carried a new understanding. Humans were unpredictable, resourceful, and courageous beyond expectation. The duel had ended, but the lesson would remain with her forever. Carter, standing in the pale moonlight, allowed himself a small, proud smile. He had not just survived a battle. He had changed the way an entire species, or at least one of its finest warriors, viewed humanity. He had proven that courage, intelligence, and resilience could defy expectations, that strength was more than muscle, and that determination could inspire even the most confident opponent to respect the impossible. As the first light of dawn began to touch the peaks of Carrion 9, Zarya and Carter left the battlefield together. There was no enmity, only understanding and respect. The human had faced the alien warrior, and the outcome had surprised her not in the sense of defeat, but in the revelation that strength comes in many forms. And for the first time, Zarya understood that humans were far more capable than anyone had believed. The story of the human who had challenged an alien warrior spread across worlds, a tale of ingenuity, courage, and mutual respect. Carter had shown that humanity could survive, adapt, and even inspire awe in the strongest of opponents. Zarya, once confident in her unmatched skill, had learned that strength alone was not the measure of a warrior. Together, they had created a legend, one that would echo through the stars, reminding everyone that courage, intelligence, and determination could defy the expected and change the way the universe viewed humanity.